Welcome to my YouTube video. My name's Gene Gray. I'm going to cover the NCAA tournament and who I think some of the teams are going to be that are going to make the tournament. I'm basically just going to go through some of the conferences. I'm not going to go through all the conferences where they'll get their automatic bids and that's the only thing they're going to get. So I'm not going to go through those conferences. I'm going to go through the main conferences, some of the teams I think that will be on the bubble. I'm not going to do the first four in, first four out, all that stuff that the media does or on ESPN and those different places. I'm just going to put what teams I think are probably locked to make it, and then the ones that won't. Or on the bubble, might make it. It just depends. And, of course, how it always works is it seems like if you're in a big conference, even if you have a worse record, you usually get in because you have quality opponents that you play. But I'm just going to basically go through a couple of these and just let you know what I think what might happen. So I'm going to start off with the Atlantic 10. This is going to be a tough conference because they have decent teams, and I think two of the teams will make it. But Dayton, I think, is going to be one of the teams in. They have some quality opponents they played and beat. I think they'll get in. I think VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University, will get in. I don't think Davidson and Rhode Island have enough. So depending on what they do in their conference tournament, they're going to have to beat some of those teams if they're going to have a chance to get in. But I don't see any way that they'll be in because they don't have any quality wins against top teams, which usually happens because they won't play them. But that's just the way it's going to work. The Big East, I've got Villanova and Butler, Providence, Georgetown, I think are pretty much locks. Georgetown, they've had some decent wins, and I think they'll have enough to get in. I also think St. John's will make it too. But Georgetown and St. John's could be on the bubble. But I think they'll both get in just because of the conference they play in. The Big 12, I've got Kansas, Oklahoma, West Virginia, Baylor, Iowa State. I'm pretty sure Oklahoma State will get in just because they've got some quality wins, and I think they're one of the best conferences. Texas, going to have to win a couple games in the tournament and probably beat some of those teams up above. And they could knock out Oklahoma State. But I think Oklahoma State's going to, if they play each other, I think Oklahoma State's going to win the game. I think they're in. Texas is going to be sitting out there. They're going to be on the board for those last 3 or 4 teams that they pick. Then in the Big Ten, Wisconsin, Maryland, Ohio State, Michigan State, I think are locks to be in. Purdue is probably in. I think Iowa's in. Most of the boards that I've looked at of the different other different websites, they had Iowa, Purdue in. They even had Indiana in. I think one of those teams might be left out, but they're in the Big Ten. Big Ten's been down some, but I think it's good enough that even Indiana might get in. But I'm not going to guarantee that they're in. I think I was in for sure, but Indiana's going to have to win some games in the tournament. Conference USA, Louisiana Tech, I think will win the tournament and get that automatic bid. Old Dominion and UTEP have had pretty good records, but in the conference you're in, you're not playing anyone. So I think they're going to be going to the NIT. The Mountain West, Boise State and San Diego State, I think, are for sure to make it. Colorado State, they should get in, but they're going to be on the bubble team. But I think they'll get 3 in. Utah State, Wyoming have decent records, but they don't have any wins against those top 3 teams. So they're going into the other tournament. The Pac-12, Arizona, Utah, and Oregon. Oregon is on the bubble on some of them. I think they're in. They've got 22 wins. If they get any more, I mean, if they're up to 23, 24, 25 wins, they've got to be in. UCLA, I don't think is going to make it. Unless they do something in the tournament and beat some of those ranked teams or those teams above them that are going to the tournament, I don't see it. They're going to have to almost get to the championship game. Stanford had some decent wins. They're going to be a team that's on the bubble that could get in. it's going to go either way. I think they'll get in over UCLA. But I think they're just going to get 3 from the Pac-12. And then the Missouri Valley, Wichita State, Northern Iowa, of course, both those teams are top-ranked teams. So I think they'll get in. Illinois State, they didn't get a win against either of those teams. So unless they do something in the tournament and beat one of those two teams, I think they pretty much have to win the tournament. And so those, I think they'll just be 2 teams out of the Missouri Valley. Now the one conference that I think probably should get 6 in, and that's the Southeastern Conference. Now I'm a Missouri Tiger fan. Of course, my team's in last place, and they're having the worst records they've ever had. And I don't want to be biased, and I'm going to try not to. But since I don't have to talk about Missouri, that should be pretty easy. But in the Southeastern Conference, of course, I think Kentucky's going to win it all. Unless they just fall apart. And of course, you can lose one game in the tournament. Their size, they're the best team. I think there's a bunch of other teams that could give them trouble if they lose. I think those teams are just hoping that Kentucky gets upset. But they're looking like the team that won the national championship before. And I think this team's, I don't know if it's better, because I don't know if there's going to be that as many NBA players off the squad, but there probably will. But with their size, I think Gonzaga and a couple other teams, or Duke, those top-ranked Arizona, I think those are the only teams that have a chance. Now, would I be shocked if somebody else beats them in the first couple rounds? Probably not, but I think they're at least to the Sweet 16, to the Elite 8 for sure. But I think they're a way better team than they were last year, and with the Harrisons getting the experience they've got before, I don't think there's, unless some other team, unless Kentucky loses and falls apart in one game, I think they're going to be the ones that win it all. Arkansas is going to be an interesting team. Mike Anderson used to coach at Missouri, and this is the kind of team that gives people fits in the tournaments. So and he's got a superstar in Bobby Portis. Arkansas is a team I think that can go quite a ways. So they're another team that when you play them in the NCAA tournament and with the style they play, they will give teams problems. And they're a team I expect to do pretty well. Now they did pretty well in the SEC. They're going to finish second or somewhere in there. So watch out for the Razorbacks. Then I think Texas A&M, LSU, and Mississippi are going to get in. One of those teams, Georgia, Mississippi, A&M, if they lose some games and they lose early in the tournament, they could get left out. But with the quality that the SEC, way better conference than it was last year, I think you'll see them get 6 in. And then I've got the West Coast Conference, which Gonzaga will get in. BYU, I think with that win against Gonzaga, will make the tournament too. And I don't think they'll leave them out. St. Mary's, you're on the bubble. I don't think you have enough quality wins to get in. So unless you beat BYU or Gonzaga in the tournament, I don't see it happening. But this one, I think there's a couple teams that can win this tournament, but Kentucky, unless they get upset early, I don't think they win. Because Kansas, I mean, you've got the handful of top teams that could win. The only team that I think that could give them the most fits is Gonzaga, but they got to learn to win in the tournament. They've got to get to the Elite 8, Final Four, and they haven't done that. And they've had really good teams. So, but they have the size. They've got some really tall players underneath. So, and they're well-rounded, but I don't like the way they've been playing lately. And you want to go in the tournament playing pretty well. But, of course, when you haven't lost many games, it's hard to make that run. But I really think Gonzaga or Arizona are the two teams, but they've got to play well, and I just don't know if they're going to even be able to get to the Final Four, have a chance of doing that. So, but hopefully next year I can talk about my Tigers, because, of course, whenever I fill out my brackets, they always go, I pick them way farther than they're supposed to go, or I have them lose early and then they go to the Elite 8. But hopefully I'm talking about the Tigers again. but I think they're going to be in rebuilding mode for a while with their new coach. So, but that's all I've got to say about the NCAA tournament and some of the teams I think will make it.